Namaskaraha and welcome to our next session on the yogic life. So today, before moving ahead on the spiritual life, I want to talk about what is the key to moving ahead on this path. Right? Everybody has experience of how weak a human being is. The attractions in this world are overwhelming. So how is it that a human being is to move ahead on the spiritual path from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock? So this is a major question. Most people are unable to do it. But yet it is said that the design of human being is for this very work of merging into that infinite entity. So essentially the question is, how does it work? How does it happen? Right? We see that, time and again, that even just changing food habit is next to impossible for human beings. Right? Like it is such a simple thing. Even that it becomes very difficult to change. Like for instance, let's take dairy products. People cannot do it. Right? We see that with our students all the time. They cannot do it. So for somebody it may be dairy products, and for somebody else it may be oil, or for somebody else it may be salt. Right? Whatever that item is, it is really a simple thing. There is really nothing great about all those things, right? Any single one of them. Even though there is nothing great about it, but people cannot stop it because of their own weakness. So what is the solution? What is the answer? Right? We have actually talked about this before. How does it work? So what is the point here? The point here is that human beings are indeed very weak. And this Parama Prakriti is extremely powerful. Right? And yet we know that there is another entity who is more powerful. And that entity is Paramapurusha. Right? Paramapurusha is more powerful. Prakriti is a tool of that Paramapurusha. She is nothing more than that. She is a dasi of that Paramapurusha. So what is the key over here? Whether we talk about any aspect of people's attachment to this world, how do we move ahead when we have all these attachments, right? Somebody doesn't want to stop cooked food. Somebody doesn't want to stop dairy products. Somebody doesn't want to stop oil. Somebody doesn't want to stop, whatever the attractions of the world, right? So, whatever the thing may be, people get stuck up in their attachments and they cannot move beyond it. Everybody can make a list of what they have in their own lives. Everybody knows what they are. Each person knows it. So it's just that the list may be somewhat different, but ultimately it's not very different. There's only a certain number of things in this world that people don't get attracted to, right? But mostly we get attracted to things. It may be alcohol, it may be food, it may be clothes, it may be shoes, it may be whatever it is. You can just, fill in the blank, right? Whether it is money, name, fame, right? Somebody got a PhD and they cannot move beyond that. They have to introduce themselves with that PhD, right? So when they have their email ID, they have to put PhD, right? So they cannot refrain from putting a doctor in their own email ID, right? What is actually really the need to put that designation, right? Who cares what the degree is, right? So, but for a lot of people, it becomes really important to put that doctor in front of their name. They cannot tolerate not putting it, right? So they have to introduce themselves as doctor such and such, right? So some people do it even if they don't have a degree, right? They just want to show off, so they want to put it. So people have all kinds of different attachments. So whatever it is, and they're not able to move beyond that, whether it's name, fame, degree, alcohol, or whatever, you name it, right? There is a list. And people know that they shouldn't, but they cannot help it. So what is the solution? What is the way out, right? So that is the mother's caste keys, right? It is a theory, and this theory is very, very powerful. and is that when you get something better, then you lose the interest. When you got something better, then you lose the interest. And somebody who cannot move beyond their intoxication with the things of this world, it is a proof that they didn't get the better toy. They are holding on to the mother's car keys, which is the pratinidhi of food, name, fame, whatever it may be, right? And they're not going to let it. Just like the baby, right? Just like the baby is holding on to the mother's car keys because it did not get a better toy, right? The baby did not get the better toy. So it is fine to say that when you get something better, then you lose the interest. The baby loses the interest in the mother's car keys when the baby gets something better. It gets a better toy. Then it will lose interest, right? Until then it will not lose interest. So then what are we going to do to get that better toy? Right? That is the challenge. And most people don't get easily that better toy. They don't get it. There is only a small number of people who actually get the better toy, right? So we have this faculty as human beings. We have that. Everybody has the ability to get that better toy. And it is by the grace of that Paramapurusha, they get that toy which is better, right? But people don't get it easily, right? Largely because of the atmosphere in the world. People are surrounded by all of these things. They are attracted by the advertisements and all these images on television, right? So we have to get rid of this television first thing, right? We cannot have a television in the house. If anybody has one, we have to get rid of it. It's actually a useless thing. It spoils your mind, right? You're just asking for trouble. Playing the TV is an invitation for the crudities of this world to enter your mind. That is all it is. All the companies are so happy that there is a television in most people's houses, right? It is their free invitation to start invading your mental space, right? Why do people have so much difficulty moving beyond this and getting that toy, right? You got to get the toy that is better than the mother's car keys, and then you will lose interest in the car keys, but you do not get that toy. Then what happens, right? That is what happens to vast majority of people. They don't get the toy because they don't really have the interest in getting it. They are very engaged in all of these crude things. They're socializing, they're having conversations with people, going to parties, having alcohol, having different things. All those things are very intoxicating, right? So people cannot live without those things, right? And if somebody has these attachments, then it is a proof that they haven't gotten the better toy. If you got the better toy, then you will not have these attachments. You will not have attachment to the car key because the toy was better, right? So the secret is getting that toy. That is the secret. Getting that toy which is better than the car keys is the secret. Until you get that toy, it seems like an insurmountable amount of an insurmountable sort of problem, right? All these attachments to this world, right? So we know that human beings are weak. We know that human beings have all these attachments to the things of the world. We know that so long as somebody cannot drop the attachment to the things of the world, it's the proof that they did not get the toy, right? Somebody can give all kinds of lectures about getting that better toy, and then they will lose the interest in car key. But so long as somebody didn't get that toy, then they're not going to drop that car key, right? So that is the fact. So for a very small number of people, getting the toy is easy, right? And they become very, very interested in that toy, that better toy. Then, once you get the toy, it becomes very easy. But for the rest of the people, for those whom it is not easy, what do we have to do, right? This is a very important question. What do we have to do? We don't have interest, right? I've heard people say, you keep talking about spiritual life. I don't absolutely have no interest. I have no interest. So what do we do? How do we develop that interest? So here is how we develop this interest, right? The spiritual life, this yoga is a science, right? This yoga nishta jivanam, it's a science because it works. Science means something which is reproducible. It's not just that one person could do it and nobody else. Anybody could do it. We have talked about this many times. This yoganishta jivanam is like a yantra. Yeah, it's like a machine. It's like a factory. So in a factory, when you put in the mill, when you put wheat into the mill, you're going to get the wheat flour. And it is not what the wheat has to be. It is not that the wheat has to be of a certain quality in order to be able to make the flour, right? You just put any wheat. You just take any wheat and put it in the mill, and you're going to get the flour, right? There may be different types of wheat flour. You can take any grain, virtually any grain, put it in the mill, and you're going to get the flour on the other side. So because that machine has the quality for doing that, so same way this yoganishta jivanam is a yantram. If you put a human being into that machine, right, with all sincerity, then you're going to get good quality on the other side. You're going to get the flour. You're going to put an animal in the human form into that machine, and you're going to get a human in the human form, a deva in human form coming out of that machine. And we know that, right? So there are all kinds of helping aspects in this machine. The machine has various facets to it. The satvik ahara, nirjal upasa, vyapak soch, asanas, right? All of these things are there. But the most critical one, the most important one, the center of it all is sadhana. That is the center of that is the mantra, right? So when we say mantra, that word is actually abused and misused, right? They call anything a mantra, right? But what is a mantra? Mananat trayate yastu saha mantraha iti parikirtitaha. So repetition of that with proper ideation, right, will give liberation, which will give liberation. That is called as mantra, right? So you cannot call anything as mantra, only something which has the capability of liberating you when you ideate on it repeatedly, right? So the repetition with proper ideation gives liberation. It liberates, right? So what happens is that with proper ideation, one gets love for that, deep love for that Paramapurusha. And that is the toy. That is the toy. And it happens through sadhana. And sadhana is a science. So when people learn sadhana, it has to be learned from a proper person who knows the proper technique, right? Then only it will help. In this world, thousands of people are teaching and learning meditation around the world. So they don't know what they are doing. This whole yoga movement and this meditation, it's all pseudo. Right? When you get a proper mantra, when you get taught what the proper ideation is, and how to do it, and how to practice sadhana, then only you got something which is going to empower you to move ahead in this life, right? So when we say moving ahead, what do we mean? Moving ahead means not getting name, fame, money, or promotion in the company. That's not moving ahead. So we have come into this universe for a purpose, for doing certain work. And what does that work mean? We have come here to become one with that Paramapurusha, to merge into him, to please him, to fall in love with that entity. And that happens only through sadhana, right? It's a science. One has to learn that science, and one, after having learnt it, we have to practice it. Just learning is not enough. We have to practice it. Otherwise it's just useless, right? So human beings don't have the power to move beyond these attachments of the world on their own, right? So it takes something more powerful to do that. And Paramapurusha is the key, right? The key of sadhana. It is Paramapurusha's own science that he is giving. He is giving the science, and it is up to the human beings to take it and use it. So the key is the sadhana. the center of this is the mantra, proper mantra with proper ideation. When one uses that, then one gets the flow of deep attraction for Paramapurusha, the love for Paramapurusha. One gets the love for Paramapurusha. So that is the entity. That is the bandhu. Paramapurusha is the bandhu, right? And the only entity who will be with us only entity who was with us before we were born, only entity which will be there with us even after our death, right? He is the only entity with whom the attraction grows. In when we look, our love for other human beings, sometimes it is there and sometimes it goes away. It's not permanent, right? It's not like our love for another human being is there all the time. It is there today and tomorrow it may not be there, right? But our love, our attraction for Paramapurusha is
participants in the conference.
It is there.
Has started.
It is there all the time, right? It is there throughout the life, right? So we cannot say like that for other people in the world, right? So we cannot say that our attraction to another person grows and grows and grows and grows, right? So our attraction to Paramapurusha, one gets the attraction and it goes on more and more. It's a very beautiful thing. That entity is attracting us all the time, and that happens through sadhana, that happens through mantra repetition, right? So that is the proper science, the true yogic science. And when one gets that science, right, when we get taught sadhana, then our whole life changes, right? Whole life changes when we practice it, right? So many people come and learn sadhana and go, but they never cross the first stage, the yatamana stage, right? They hardly did any sadhana. They learned it, they didn't use it, right? If the mind is of a very low quality, it's not going to feel attracted in sadhana. It's going to feel much more attracted in other things, right? In murti puja and all of that, right? The murti is made of panchabhuta, right? So what happens is that when somebody's mind is of reasonable quality, then they will engage in sadhana, they will start doing sadhana, and with that their mind gets elevated, right? This Paramapurusha is anadi ananta satta, right? And when you learn the sadhana from a proper person, then the mind gets attracted to that Paramapurusha, right? And that is the solution. That is the solution for moving ahead. That is the solution to move ahead. That is the better tool that we have got to enter into this Yoganishta Jivanam, understand what Manava Dharma is, right? And it's not that there are multiple paths to the top of the mountain. There is only one path, the Yoga Sadhana. One has to learn the sadhana. There is no other way, right? So one has to get deep love for that Paramapurusha through sadhana, then it is going to work, right? So the real thing is that we have to get the better toy than the car key. And what is that better toy? The better toy is Paramapurusha, love for Paramapurusha, deep attraction for Paramapurusha. That happens through sadhana, and there is no other way to do it. So even if you have implemented ahara and all of that, but you're not doing sadhana, then you're not going to experience the love for Paramapurusha. When you do sadhana regularly, your whole existence changes, and you're not going to experience that just by words. You can experience that only when you yourself do it, right? It is you and your Paramapurush, right? It's you and your Paramapurush, and by doing sadhana one gets the deep attraction. Then they will lose the interest in the attractions of the world, and there is no other way. And we see that with all our students, they can't fully accept the sattvic ahara, they cannot stop oil, they can't stop salt, they can't stop any of it, right? It is because they absolutely have no interest in Paramapurusha. But once somebody gets interested in Paramapurusha, they will learn sadhana, they will start doing it, they will deeply engage in it, then everything becomes easy, right? So when somebody has a cancer and you get the treatment and they get the remission from cancer, right? So then it comes back again and then you get little remission, then it comes back, right? So this is what is the people's attraction to the world. If somebody engages in the yogic life in a very, very sincere way, in a deep way, then their attachments to the things of the world goes away, right? Nothing stops them. So the only solution to all of this is sadhana and Paramapurusha, engaging with Paramapurusha. The more and more you engage with Paramapurusha, you will experience bliss in this very life, right? So that is what I wanted to actually cover today. And this Yoganishta Jivanam is not just theory, it works. It works. Somebody who has been sincere in doing it, they themselves will see how their life has changed, how their view of the world has changed, how their bhakti bhava has changed. All of that they will experience in their own life. You don't have to get the pramana from anybody else, right? The pramana is in you, is right in you. Okay, so that is what I wanted to cover today. So we were actually talking about the Yama and Niyama. So we were in the Niyama. We're talking about the Niyama. So we said that to so we said that in order to create an ideal society, then all the members of the society have to follow the spiritual code of conduct, which is the Yama and Niyama, right? And then that will be the foundation for an ideal society. So the individuals in the society also have a responsibility, and the society also has a responsibility. So the individuals have to follow the Yama and Niyama. They must not violate the principles of Yama and Niyama. They should live a simple life. They should not be extravagant. If they are extravagant and incur a debt and go to the society for help, then that is not correct. Then even though the society has to help, at the same time individuals also have a responsibility. If they are irresponsible and incur debt and go to the society for help, that is not correct. So there should be certain rules in the society, in the community, right? Everybody should follow the principles of Yama and Niyama. All the sadhakas, when they're having an issue, when they're going to incur any heavy expenditure, they should consult other sadhakas, right? They should consult other sadhakas and be guided on the principles of Yama and Niyama. So we should lead a life of aparigraha, right? We should not spend on things which are unnecessary. Whatever the basic essentials that we need for our life, the food, clothing, all of that we need to have. Food, clothing, medicine, all of that we need to have, the basic things. But beyond that, having expensive stuff, expensive clothing, ornaments, those are all not required. So when you are engaging in such kind of activity, we should seek the help of the society or the other sadhakas. So we have the 10 principles of Yama and Niyama. The 5 principles of Yama we have already seen, and of the 5 principles of Yama, brahmacharya is very important, and of the 5 principles of Niyama, Ishvara Pranidhana is very important. So we started looking at the first principle of Niyama, that is Shaucha, that is cleanliness. So it is internal cleanliness and external cleanliness. Internal cleanliness, we use soap water to clean ourselves and the surroundings. External cleanliness, we use soap water to clean the body and also to clean the surroundings. So we have to keep our surroundings clean, and also we have to keep the body clean. So the question is, a more difficult question is, how do we keep our internal clean, abhyantara shaucha, internal cleanliness? That is more difficult and more important. How do we keep our mind clean? So the mind, when it interacts with the external objects, it gets crudified, right? It gets crudified, right? So it has all the malas and doshas. It has jealousy, right? It wants to keep everything to itself. If somebody is getting successful, then the mind doesn't tolerate. We get jealousy. We are overpowered by jealousy. We have selfish interest, right? So when we have to clean our clothes or the external surroundings, then we have to interact with the dust, right, and dirt. but when we have to clean our internal our mind, then we don't have to interact with the dirt, right? So but cleaning the mind is far more laborious, is far more difficult. So we should the people who are wise, they will not engage with things that pollute the mind. They will keep their mind pure. So we have seen that even people who have stable minds, in certain situations they lose their cool, right? In a minute, in a second, they lose their cool. Therefore it is very important uh, to have this internal cleanliness, right? This external shaucha is an external activity, the mental shaucha is an internal activity, right? So what happens is that people have temptations for the external objects, they have selfish motivation, they have greed for money, right? So what we have said is, how do we purify the mind? We purify the mind by taking this viparita bhavana, taking the viparita bhavana. If you are greedy for money, then you have to practice charity. You have to practice charity. You have to make sure that you donate, right? You should practice this viparita bhavana. If you are having jealousy in your mind, if somebody is successful and you're jealous, then you have to practice the viparita bhavana, right? You have to practice every time. You have to practice the viparita bhavana. By following the viparita bhavana, the flames of greed will be burnt, and the selfishness will be burnt, right? All of those malas, all of those doshas of the mind will get will actually go away from the mind, right? So if somebody has done there are some people whom you have helped, and that person is not showing gratitude, then what happens is people get very angry at the other person, and they start cursing that person, saying, see how much I helped him, but this is his behavior, he's being very mean. But that is not actually correcting, that is actually mental meanness. Even though you have helped somebody, you should not curse the other person, right? Those are all mental meanness. Somebody who has done sadhana will not, who's truly done sadhana, his mind will not be in such a state. Only if you have not truly done sadhana, then your mind will steep to such a stage. Okay, so far we have covered. Now we can actually go to the next paragraph. Subrajyoti Bhagini, do you want to take the next one? A question may be arised.
Yes, a question may be arise as to how much people should donate for Soch sadhana. Should they make paupers of themselves? Where service is the goal, people should fully observe a prigraha, acquiring only the bare necessities of life for themselves and their direct dependents, without which they cannot live, and utilize the rest for the collective welfare of the universe. So the question is that how should we donate so that our Soch sadhana is done? Should we make like ourselves poor? But the service of goal, when goal is service, we should follow a prigraha. We should have only the bare necessities of life for us and for our direct dependents, the necessities without which we cannot live, and we can utilize rest for the collective welfare of universe. It shouldn't be like that we and our us and our direct dependents don't have bare necessities and we donate everything. We have to follow prigraha. We have to only keep our bare necessities of life, and the rest we can use for social service or collective welfare of the universe.
Nicely said, Bhagini. Yeah. So the first thing that we have to understand is what is donation, right? Donation is you give something and you don't take something in return, right? If you give money and take a product, then that is not a seva, that is not service, that is not donation, right? So you don't get anything in return, where you get something in return, that is business, right? So the point over here is this aparigraha is very, very important, right? If somebody wants to really dedicate themselves for shaucha, right, if somebody wants to really do service, right, then the criteria is following aparigraha, right? Aparigraha means only keeping whatever minimum is required for maintaining yourself and your family, right, and the rest should be dedicated for the benefit of the larger society, right? It is not only the the food, clothing, shelter, and also people can have reasonable amount for their retirement also, right? So whatever the basic that they need in the current living conditions, for themselves and for their family, right? And we've seen in aparigraha what that is, what is the minimum requirements for a person, right? It depends, it depends and it varies from place, person and time, right? And any excess amount should be excess should be donated for the benefit of the larger society. So if somebody has a family, then they have two families, the small family and the big family, right? And if somebody is really very sincere, is a sincere sadhaka, then they feel deeply about both the families. That big family is also their family. So one who has the feeling that Paramapurusha is my father and all of the creation, everybody is my brother and my sister, right? Somebody who really has that feeling, then they will naturally have the desire to serve, right? It's not something that is forced, it's quite natural, right? By following aparigraha is also a matter of pleasure. It's not like they're doing it out of force, right? So the guidelines are all very clear. There is no need for accumulating all kinds of things, purchasing expensive things when it is not needed, right? We have talked about all of those things in the past, right, under aparigraha, right? So this is not to say that we should starve, it is not to say that we should not be clean, we should not be cared for, right? We should have whatever is required for our sustenance and for our maintenance, and that doesn't mean that we should have a castle, that we should have a palace, right? Our dwelling should be very simple. It should have the basic facilities, and beyond that, all of one's time and resources should be dedicated for atma moksha and jagat hit, right? By doing that, the shaucha will be automatically accomplished. That is the point. The mental purity will be achieved by yoganishta jivanam. By doing sadhana, mental purity will automatically be achieved, and then a person will be sincerely following aparigraha. Okay, begin next paragraph.
But one who is dedicated to an ideal must be prepared to gladly and eagerly give up one's all, even one's life, for the collective interest. Even in a house where food isn't abundant, you should keep something for the resi- residents of the house to appease their hunger and donate the rest to the needy. In this case, thinking of the resident's necessity is not awareness or meanness, because the preservation of life is certainly very important. Tough, not the ultimate aim. When one is fighting for an ideal, however, to accept defeat means to plunge in a severe, severe gloom, where there is not the least possibility to remove the gloom. One will have to sacrifice everything to uphold one's ideal. You should always be ready like an armed soldier to meet such exchanges. Bhagini, what does this mean? Dedicated to an ideal?
Dedicated to an ideal means pleasing Paramapurusha.
Okay,
That's
so
the ideal. Attaining Paramapurusha, pleasing Paramapurusha is the ideal.
okay, so if one is dedicated to an ideal, so they must be like all prepared to give their all. Like even if their life has asked they for like collective welfare, then they should eagerly give. their life. In a house where food is not enough, then they can keep some food for the house people and donate the rest to the needy. Like thinking about the residents' necessities is not meanness, because life preservation is also important. It's important, but it's not an ultimate aim. If one is fighting for an ideal, and to accept defeat means to plunge in severe gloom. If what does this mean, Bhagini? Plunge in severe gloom?
Means gloom means sadness, deep sadness.
Gloom, yes. And
Yeah,
what
to
is
plunge
this?
into something, plunge into sorrow. When you've accepted something as an ideal, and but what happens is, in that you have to continue to struggle, right? If you accept defeat, that means you're going to get sorrow. So in order to follow your ideal, in order to uphold your ideal, you have to sacrifice everything, right? You have to sacrifice your tan, man and dhan for the ideal.
Where there is not the least possibility to remove the gloom, then
Yeah,
one can sacrifice. Yes, Bhagini.
yeah. Let me clarify for you. So the first thing is that aparigraha, right? We have to understand what is aparigraha. Aparigraha, right? People may be thinking that having luxurious things is part of their necessities, but an important thing is identifying, distinguishing between what is a necessity and what is not, right? So this becomes a very natural process as we are involved in yogic life, right? That is what is aparigraha, what is really needed and what is not needed, right? It's very, very important point. As somebody becomes more and more involved in yogic life, then what things are needed, right? And what things are not needed becomes very, very clear. What they had thought are the things needed, they no longer become needed, right? Very, very few things are needed, right? So when you look at the parking lot and you see there are so many cars, right? So there are so many cars, and some are luxurious cars and some are not luxurious cars. So by looking at it, we know that what is the need for those luxurious cars, right? If the point is moving from A to B, then there is no need for such uh, such an expensive car. So over here it says, if you're dedicated to an ideal, right? If you're dedicated to an ideal, you must be prepared to gladly and eagerly give up one's life for the collective interest. So what is it we are talking about? We are talking about Manushya Man Pradhan Jeev, right? Human being is a mind predominant being, right? So we are talking about when somebody has an ideal, adarsh, right? Ideal means adarsh, that one is dedicated, right? Somebody may be a grahastha, somebody may be a sannyasa. We should all be dedicated for our ideal, for our adarsh in life. And this is where somebody feels that they cannot live for their ideal, they are accepting defeat, means here it is to plunge into severe gloom, right? If we know that the goal of human life is to attain Paramapurusha, but people give up, they say, this is not for me, they say, and they give up, right? When they give up, they are plunging into sorrow, they could have got bliss by following the Yoganishta Jivanam, but when they give it up, they are plunging into severe gloom, right? So long the mind will be positive as long as one is dedicated for one's ideal, for one's adarsha. One must never accept defeat on this point, right? One is dedicated for the ideal, they should never sacrifice the ideal, the Atma Moksha and Jagat Hit, right? Paramapurusha is everything in life, and one should be ready to give up one's own life for that. That is a very, very important point, right? One must be willing to give up their own life for that, right? So when somebody has that kind of mentality, that kind of approach, then whatever happens in life, the mind will never become negative. The mind is always positive, right? Because they don't have any individual existence. Whatever they're doing for Paramapurusha. Their mind is always positive. So you've seen Acharyaji, right? He has dedicated his life for this, and we, all of us as sadhakas, that is what our aim should be, is to dedicate our life. Acharyaji has dedicated his life for this adarsh. And have you ever seen his mind becoming with sorrow? Have you ever seen his mind with sorrow? Never. I have never seen him feeling sad or upset. He's always positive, right? So that is the strength that you get from Paramapurusha. That strength to overcome everything, right? It comes from the infinite strength of Paramapurusha, right? When Paramapurusha is the goal of life, then there is no question of the mind becoming depressed, becoming sad, or going in the wrong way, or becoming negative, right? So long as somebody has this kind of approach, then the mind will always be positive, will always remain positive, and others also will always become inspired, and they will feel better by being in such a person's company, right? So they are also moving ahead to something very, very meaningful. Then life has a deep meaning, a deep sense, right? Because the life is based on that adarsha, that ideal, Atma Moksha and Jagat Hit. They put everything, they put their whole life in pleasing that Paramapurusha. So long as that remains as the top priority, then everything will fall in place. No question, there is no problem, right? There is no notion of gloom, or there is no notion of sadness, right? So the notion of the gloom or sadness will come only when you sacrifice your ideal, right? When you uphold your ideal, when the ideal is maintained as a top priority, in that circumstance the mind will never fall, right? So the mind is always happy, is always positive, right? So like for instance, when you're looking at a terrorist, right? They come to some public place and then they blow themselves up and they kill like 15-20 people, right? So this is not what we are talking. They are all fundamentalists. They have this others which they have. That is not what we are talking about. Everybody knows that, right? What we are actually talking about here is on the psycho-spiritual plane, that somebody is an armed soldier. That means the type of seriousness. When we're looking at a person who is in army, they're very, very disciplined. They're very, very serious. Their only goal is protecting the country, right? With that seriousness, they're dedicated. They're dedicated for that ideal. So similarly, in Yoganishta Jivanam, with all seriousness, we should be dedicated for the ideal of Atma Moksha and Jagat Hit, service to Paramapurusha. So that is the type of training that we need, right? The kind of training that they get in military. That is, right? Right? Those people who are in the military, they're dedicated for all of us, right? Right, this military is an important function in the society, there's no doubt, right? So these soldiers are taught how to behave, right? If somebody inculcates that type of seriousness in spiritual life, right, then they will be guaranteed success. We are all sadhakas, we are all like soldiers, in a sense that we are absolutely dedicated in life. We are dedicated to the ideal of Atma Moksha and Jagat Hit, right? Paramapurusha is the goal. So then the mind is always positive, right? And that is the shaucha, right? Having that type of attitude, then the mind becomes very, very clean. It becomes clean and it will remain clean. And that is the mental shaucha, right? So that means there will not be any selfishness, right? That's the point here. We won't have any selfishness. The mind is pure and clean. We are dedicated to the ideal. So there is no sorrow at all. There is no sorrow. When you give up your ideal, that is when you get the sorrow. When you give up your ideal, what happens is selfishness creeps in. The moment the selfishness creeps in, sorrow also comes, right? Sorrow comes, the mind falls. But when you're dedicated to the ideal, you don't have any selfishness. You have surrendered yourself to Parama Purusha. The mind is very, very pure and clean, and that is the mental shaucha that we are actually talking about. Is it clear, Bhagini? Tell me what you understood.
Yes, Bhagini, it's clear. It means that if we like don't fight for our ideal, then then sorrow or sadness creeps in and create gloom. So the only thing to remove gloom is that we have to uphold our ideal, and we should have a discipline like an armed soldier, so that in any case we have to uphold our ideal. We don't have to be like uh, we don't have to be accept defeat in case of upholding our ideal, because then only meanness, sorrow and gloom will come in.
Hmm. Beautifully said. Yeah, beautifully said. So what is our ideal?
Param Purusha.
Param Purusha is the ideal. Atma Moksha and Jagat Hit is our ideal. Parama Purusha is our ideal. So you just hold on to that. Then life is smooth. Life is always positive. Life is in bliss. There is no sorrow at all. Okay. So very good. So we'll take the next one, which is Santosha. So you want to take that one, Bhagini? Santosha?
Yes, Bhagini. Tosha means state of mental ease. Santosa therefore means a state of proper ease. Contentment is not at all possible if the individual is running after carnal pleasures like a beast. As a result of extroversial analysis, the objects of enjoyment go on increasing both in number and abstraction, and that is why one's mental flow never gets any rest. Under such circumstances, how can one attain perfect peace of mind? Achieving the desired objects may give one pleasure for an hour and so, but that will not last long. The mind will again run in pursuit of new objects, leaving behind the objects ready tested. The long cherished objects will lose their importance. That is the rule. There is the law of nature. This is the law of nature. So santosa, tosa means mentally, and santosa means that proper the mental state in which the ease is proper. Contentment is not possible if we are running behind pleasures like a beast. And there were an extroversial analysis, and according to that analysis results, the physical object enjoyment goes on increasing, and the mental flow for getting the physical objects never get any rest. So if the physical pleasure always increase, and the mental flow to obtain those physical pleasures never uh, stops, always increase, then in that case it's very hard to gain the peace of mind, perfect peace of mind. If we get those physical things, we may happy for 1 hour and so, but that will not last long. Then the mind will again run in pursuit of new objects. leaving behind the objects that already tested, and that objects we were so in love with uh, now doesn't keep any significance. So that is a rule of nature, that once we get something, then we run behind another thing, another physical object. So in that case, the getting peace of mind is not possible, because the search is never ending thing, and we cannot get santosh after by running after physical objects.
Yes, Bharni, nicely said. Nicely said. The thing over here is tosha. What is tosha? Tosha means uh, tosha means mental ease. Santosha. Santosha means uh, some plus tosha. Some plus tosha means a state of proper mental ease, state of good mental, state of very good mental ease, right? So that is what is contentment, right? So the santosha and aparigraha, they are very very closely linked, right? So they are linked by the virtue of having paramapurusha as the most important thing in one's life, right? So as we are talking about the mother's car keys, right, in the beginning of the class also we talked about the mother's car keys. The baby who is playing with the mother's car keys as a toy, right, and if you just pull the car keys, the child will start crying. But once the mother gives the child a better toy which is more attractive, then the baby will automatically lose interest in the car keys, and the baby will throw the car keys. The car keys over here represent all these superfluous luxuries which people think that they need in their life. But when we got something better, when we got paramapurusha, then they lose interest in all of these things which seemed very essential, right? But actually those things are not essential, right? They're actually not only not essential, those things are not only not essential, but they're also a burden, right? They're also a burden for us. So by engaging in the ideal, by engaging in paramapurusha, by engaging with paramapurusha, people lose interest in all those things, right? Just having minimal things, they are happy, right? And that is what is needed, and that is the aparigraha, right? When the drishya becomes established, right, when the vision is very clear, right, then they will live with whatever minimum is required for living, and the mind is living with paramapurusha, and this is the state of santosha, right? So when paramapurusha is not the essence of life, is not the core of one's life, then the mind is running out into the world trying to get satisfied by all sorts of different bhoga, right? Then in that kind of situation, the mind is never happy, the mind is never satisfied, right? And santosha is impossible, right? If you are not established in paramapurusha, then santosha is impossible, right? Those people will have more money in the world than anybody can think, right? They're just so dedicated trying to protect that money, right? And then the whole life is spent in gathering that money, right? But on the other hand, if a person is leading a simple life and having paramapurusha as the goal, then mental contentment is very natural. They don't have to do anything extra, they don't have any burden, because they're not expecting any great thing from life, right? They're not expecting this and that. They have dedicated their whole existence to paramapurusha. They will do according to paramapurusha's desire, right? Whatever minimum is required for their life, they have that, and the rest is all for service. They dedicate their whole life, their time and resources for serving the children of Paramapurusha, right? Then automatically the santosha, mental contentment, mental ease, mental peace, or is very very automatic, right? So when you get the mental peace from such from Paramapurusha, then that mental peace is stable mental peace. It's not like you have peace for one hour and then it is gone. It's not like that, right? That mental contentment is properly established, right? So that is what this paragraph is talking about. Do you want to take one more paragraph, Bhagini?
Yes. Human desire knows no end. Millionaires want to become multimillionaires because they are not satisfied with their millions. Ask the millionaires if they are happy with their money. They will say, where is the money I'm somehow pulling on? This answer indicates their ignorance of aparigraha. But such feelings have another adverse effect on body and mind. Out of excessive fondness for physical and mental pleasures, people become mad to earn money and amass wealth. As money becomes to be all and all of life, the mind gets crudified. Constant hankering after money results in negligence of one's health, and this makes the body unfit. Therefore, Santosh sadhana lies in being contented with earning of normal labor without any undue pressure on body and mind. To remain contented, one has to make a special type of mental effort to keep aloof from external allurements. Our desires have no end. Multi millionaires wants to become multimillionaires, and they say that where is money, I'm just managing it. It shows the ignorance of aparigraha, and these kind of feelings have an adverse effect on both body and mind. When we have some excessive fondness for physical things, for mental uh, pleasures, then people become mad for earning money and wealth. So because the money becomes all starting and end thing of life, then mind also gets crudified. And when someone is after constantly after money, then they also ignore their health, and that makes their body unfit. So the santosh sadhana means to be content with the earning of normal labor, like the earning that doesn't create any pressure on body or mind, and to remain content, one has to make a special type of mental effort to keep aloof from external allurements.
Yeah, Bhagini, nicely said. So people who are not established in aparigraha, right, they end up purchasing either with their own cash on hand or taking loans, all kinds of things which are beyond their means, right? And they go on doing this their whole life, and because of that they go on trying to make more and more and more money to pay for those things, right? There are some people who have so much of money, they don't know what to do with it, right? But that's not the majority people don't have that kind of money, only some people. But even though the majority of the people don't have money, but they're trying to but they're very much engaged in trying to show the world what they have, right? Because of this materialistic world, right, people get attracted to all kinds of things and they see their neighbors buying it and they want to have it, right? Whether they have the resources or not, whether they have the money or not, they take a loan and buy it just because they want to show they also have it. My neighbors have it and I also should have it, right? So you can see this in a lot of countries, in capitalistic countries, right? Like where in USA, in fact, like in many countries, right? People spend so much money on things that they don't need, and because of that, they become slaves. Trying to make more and more and more money to, so that they can fund all of these things and somehow pay for these things, which they did not need in the first place, right? So the bottom line is not to purchase things. The bottom line is not to purchase the things that you don't need. Then what happens? It frees you up. Otherwise, what happens? You become a slave to making and spending money, which becomes like a vicious cycle, right? So there are a lot of people who make a lot of money, right? And there are other people who don't make money, right? So what happens is that these people who make a lot of money, they come in fancy cars, right? Those cars are very expensive, very costly, right? And then what they do is they work very long hours. They work long hours so that they can pay for the loans, right? So people who don't make much money, what happens? They see these fancy cars and they're attracted, and they say, okay, I also want to buy these cars. They don't have the money, so they take the loan, and then they have to pay the mortgage. So because of that, they work longer hours. They strain and stress themselves, right? So out of their paychecks, a lot of money goes for the loans, right? For these auto loans. Instead of doing that and pushing them into sorrow, they could have just gotten a used vehicle just for a fraction of that price, right? And it would have served their purpose. What was the need for that fancy vehicle with the shining paint and all that, right? It's totally useless. But people are dedicated for that, right? It is because of the wrong education. So santosha can never be achieved when we are a slave to the vicious cycle, right, of making more and more money, right? So it's very important to understand this. It's very important to understand this, that we should not fall into this vicious cycle, right? There is no need to earn a lot of money, more than what you need. There is no need to have these fancy things, right? So what happens when you do that? Then it frees you up completely. Then you have more time, right? You have more time, and also you actually have more money. Then what more money, because you're not you're not spending unnecessarily on things. Then you have an opportunity for helping the society, right? And that is how a human life is supposed to be, right? We don't need to work all the 6 days a week or 5 days a week, right? So if you're dedicated for Atma Moksha and Jagat Hit, then those people will not be engaged in making more and more and more money, because that is not the goal of life, right? So the first step is aparigraha. Stop spending that money, right? Things which you really need, only those things we will buy, right? So then your expenses reduce. Then you don't have to make much money, right? You don't have to work all the time, right? And ultimately in Yoganishta Jivanam, we should be having the basic expenses, right? We should be working only 2 or 3 days a week, not 6 days, right? So so the first thing is aparigraha. So the point is santosha and aparigraha. Both of them are linked together. They're connected because both of them are linked with Parama Purusha. Okay. So we will just take this paragraph and end, Bhagini.
Yes, Bhagini. You are aware that there are two effective methods to detach the mind from tendencies. One is auto-suggestion and other outer suggestion. If anyone always tries to think thoughts just opposite to the mean tendencies which occupy the mind, a change in one's nature is bound to occur. This is auto-suggestion. A change in one's nature is also brought about if such ideals are repeatedly conveyed to one's ear by some external agent. This is called outer suggestion. In the case of some santosh sadhana, the aspirant must always follow auto suggestion. So to keep the mind from the tendencies of to attract towards physical objects, there are two suggestions, one outer and one outer. If one tries to think thoughts opposite to the main tendencies that are already occupied in the mind, a change in one's nature is bound to occur. They have to change. So this is the auto suggestion. If a change in one's nature is also can be brought by repeating such ideas by some external agent. This is auto suggestion. In case of Santosh sadhana, the aspirant must always follow auto suggestion. Bhagini, but outer agent also doing like repeating ideas. They're also doing good. Maybe one can think of mean, but outer agents are doing like repeatedly conveying the ideas.
Yeah, that is there. Outer suggestion is there, but outer suggestion will not be there 24 hours of the day, right? When you're encountering a situation where you may need to make a decision, or when you have a tendency that comes in your mind, then you know then you if you already had the outer suggestion and it is there in your mind, then the outer suggestion will come. From the outer suggestion, the outer suggestions come, right? What you're saying?
Yes, Bhagini.
So essentially both of them are valuable. Outer suggestion and outer suggestion, both of them are very, very valuable. Ultimately, when one becomes established in outer suggestion, like outer suggestion is when one has a proper environment, one is living in a proper environment, one gets affected by the environment. So if somebody is living with other if somebody is living with other people who are sadhakas, and they're engaged in satsanga like the way we are doing, then they get the ideas, they get the positive ideas, and they influence the mind in a very positive way, and that is actually good, right? So the satsang is very important. It influences the mind becomes positive. But ultimately, in order to be established in santosha, it needs to have the mind established in yogic life, right? So both of them are important, equally important, right? Outer suggestion is also important, outer suggestion is also important, satsang is also important, outer suggestion is also important. So when the satsang is not going on and you have a situation, then outer suggestion is very, very important. By the outer suggestion, you get those positive ideas in your mind, right? So so for instance, if you're thinking that you'd like to buy something, but there is another person who gives them a counsel that it is better not to do that, right? They say that I don't think you need that, right? Then what happens is that by that satsanga, then it gives you an idea that this is not required, then you got saved from incurring unnecessary expenses, right? So if they did not get that suggestion, then they would have incurred that unnecessary expense, and it would have spoiled their santosha, right? Because they wanted it and they didn't, if they wanted something and they didn't get it, then it's not going to give them santosha, right? So so the auto suggestion and auto suggestion both is working. So auto suggestion is you're thinking, if there is a situation where you're feeling jealousy, then the auto suggestion is to go viparita, right? So ultimately everything is working inside the mind. One is not feeling deprived of anything. You do not want the thing and you do not purchase it. In the outer suggestion, you wanted it, but you didn't purchase it because you got help or counsel from outside, right? So but on the auto suggestion side you didn't want it, so you didn't purchase it. So there was no feeling of deprivation, right? In auto suggestion what happens is that you wanted something, then immediately your mind gives you the auto suggestion that this is not required, so then you do not buy it. Right now the mind is not feeling deprived because you yourself decided it's not required. You're not feeling deprived. On the other hand, if you wanted to buy something and somebody told you in the satsang not to buy it, right, then what happens is that you actually had the desire for buying it and somebody told you not to buy it, right? You got the counsel or help from other side. In the auto suggestion side you did not want it in the first place, so you didn't purchase it, so there was no feeling of deprivation. So this mental contentment is there, right? So that is why it said in santosha sadhana the aspirant must always follow auto suggestion. So the difference between auto suggestion and auto suggestion, you wanted something, somebody is telling you not to buy it, you're not buying it, so you're feeling deprived, right? So you're feeling deprived, so there is no mental contentment. On the other hand, in the auto suggestion, in your mind a thought arises and then you yourself say that this is not required, right? So the desire is just curbed initially itself, so and as a result you did not buy it, and now your mind is not feeling deprived because you yourself decided that it's not required, right? So that is the auto suggestion, and with auto suggestion mental contentment is there, right? Is that clear, Bhagini?
Yes, Bhagini, yes, it's clear.
Mm.
That outer suggestion can also be like note from good environment can also be there.
Yeah, outer suggestion can be from other not so good environment. Yeah, so somebody who's established in yoga nishta jivanam and who knows the ideals, auto suggestion will work in giving santosha sadhana, right? Okay, so we will actually stop over here. It was a really very good session. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yes,
so yeah, okay, we'll conclude over here. Okay, Bhagini, namaskaraha, dhanyavadah.
Namaskara, Bhagini.
Namaskaraha.
Yes.